Geometry Dash has a large fan base and subsequently a large community of players and creators. With this being true, there are so many levels in this game. If you go into the online levels list, there are 54,000 pages of levels. Since each page is 10 levels long, there are about 545,850 levels. Maybe a little bit less than that, but the point is there are a lot of levels. And I didn't need a calculator, I just wanted to show you guys the math. I wanted to make sure we were on the same wavelength, you know what I'm saying?
Shut your stupid.
With that being said, with the amount of levels, there are bound to be some more popular than others. Cataclysm, for example, is a super legendary level that really was important to the community. In fact, this is an entry extreme that a lot of people do as their first, and also jumpstarts the most popular trilogy of all time.
I made a similar video about Bloodbath, but I'll plan to go more in depth with Cataclysm. First, I want to go over every part individually, and I want to break them down in terms of difficulty and just gameplay enjoyability. After each part, I'm going to give a difficulty rating on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 meaning the part is free, to 10 being the part is very hard. I will also do this for the enjoyment of the gameplay. Keep in mind, this is completely subjective and related to my own experience, and also with difficulty, it is related to Cataclysm itself, so a 10 on Cata might not be a 10 on a harder level. But without further ado, let's get right to it. So the very beginning of Cata starts off pretty easy, pretty chill, just kind of meant to give you a small little appetizer of what to expect in an extreme demon. If you hit this blue orb late enough, you will actually receive a coin, and it's a pretty easy coin. I suggest you just go for it at all times. In terms of difficulty, I would give this a 1 out of 10. This part is pretty much free and you will like never die to it once you just get used to it. In terms of gameplay, it's fine. I give it like a 5 out of 10. But this part immediately kicked the difficulty to 10. This is easily one of the hardest parts in the entire level. You just look at this gap right here, and the gap next to it, and the gap before it. It's diabolically hard. The grind from 0 can pretty much be summed up by getting past the first part and then dying to this part over and over and over again. I personally found this to be the hardest part in the entire level, so because of that, I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10. And because the part is so hard and such a massive choke point, it gets really annoying considering most of your time is spent right here. Because of this, I have to give the enjoyment a 3 out of 10. This next part I find to be very forgettable, so I'm going to combine this ship and this wave together in one part, because they're very similar to me. This part is just super forgettable, and it takes place right after the hardest part in the entire level. The only thing I remember is that it took me forever to finally get consistent with this ship. This wave I think is a little bit easier. It has a pretty set click pattern that you can find and get consistent with. Difficulty wise, I give this a 4 out of 10. It's not necessarily hard, it's just sometimes you die here because you're nervous from passing the hardest part of the level. And the part itself isn't bad in terms of gameplay, it's just super forgettable, so I'm going to give this a 4 out of 10 as well. Up next we have this ball part that just kind of spams the same timings for you to go in between two spikes. The part isn't necessarily hard, it's not really a run killer, but it is kind of annoying. I personally don't find this gameplay fun at all. I didn't die here very often, but when I did, it is very frustrating. On difficulty, I'll probably give this like a 4 out of 10. I don't think it's very hard. In terms of being fun, it's also like a 4 out of 10. It's not a horrible part, but it is pretty basic. These next two parts I'm going to combine because they are very, very short, but I do have a little bit to say. So first, this UFO is kind of awkward. It feels a little RNG sometimes. It's not necessarily that hard though. However, the ship is where this difficulty absolutely takes place. This is one of the hardest parts in the entire level. The ship is pretty awkward because you have to go down a little bit and then straight fly, and then obviously it switches your gravity and switches your size, so it is pretty hard to get into the straight fly on the back end as well. Because the ship exists, this is probably one of the hardest parts in the level. I'm gonna have to give this a 9 out of 10 for difficulty. In terms of fun, it actually is kind of enjoyable to play. It is a little annoying from 0 though because of the choke point, and you might die here every once in a while. But in terms of from practicing it and just from in general, I think this part is actually pretty fun. I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. Next up, you have this cube part, which I actually found to be pretty consistent. I'm not sure why I worded that as if it's like a hard part. I'm not sure if I ever died to this. This part is really, really easy, and honestly, dying from here must be the most frustrating feeling ever. This honestly feels like filler gameplay, so because of that, in terms of difficulty, I'm going to have to give this like a 2 out of 10. It's very, very easy, and in terms of gameplay, probably like a 3. It's just boring. It's not really anything interesting. Not bad, but just not fun. Now we have this build-up part, and I'll be honest, I don't really have much to say about it. It's kind of like the other parts where there's just not a whole lot going on. The part isn't hard, and it's kind of forgettable. I don't want to crap on the part too much. It does have some cool moments. Like, I like the gimmick here with the level lighting up as you go down. But it's just kind of one of those parts where it's in between memorable parts, for me at least. It's not hard, but it was kind of fun to learn, I guess, and kind of fun to play.
This part is pretty free, so I'll give this like a 3 out of 10 in terms of difficulty. In terms of gameplay, I think this is like a 5. It's not bad, it's just, again, not memorable, so it doesn't stand out. Here you have this next part, which I struggled with for no reason. I don't know why. I split this up into 2 parts. The part after this we're going to talk about after, but for some reason right here, I struggle with this a lot. I have really bad straight fly, so this is not a surprise that I struggled a lot with this. In terms of difficulty, for me trying to figure this part out, it took me a while to actually manage to do this. I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. And in terms of gameplay, it's just kind of mid, probably like a 4 out of 10. I split this up because this next part is way different and way harder in my opinion. Coin is obviously easy, it's a staple, everyone goes for this coin, but this straight fly from this dual ship is like diabolically hard. This single-handedly carries the entire difficulty of this part, and the dual ship physics are still kind of wonky, so this next part isn't exactly free either. Maybe this is just a skill issue on my part, but in my opinion, I found this to be easy, the hardest part in the entire second half. I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10 in difficulty, but the gameplay overall is kind of fun. It's just the dual ship physics I don't really like, so because of that I have to give this about a 5 out of 10. This next part is iconically really easy, and it's at the very end of the level, so that's pretty nice. If you die to this part from 0 because of nerves, I am so sorry. This part isn't hard necessarily at all, especially for an extreme demon. It looks intimidating, but when you play it, it's actually pretty easy. So because of this, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10 in difficulty, mainly because it's right at the end of the level. The part itself is pretty fun, so I'll give this about a 6 out of 10 on the enjoyment front. If the first part of this level didn't exist, this would easily be the easiest part of the entire level right here. Believe it or not, I've actually seen someone die to this last robot because they ended up timing the blue orb for the coin wrong. It apparently is possible. I didn't have it happen to me, and then obviously this last straight fly is probably a little nerve-wracking, but it was pretty easy and I managed to fluke it. Overall, there's not a whole lot of gameplay here. I'm going to give this a 1 out of 10 in difficulty, and for gameplay, I'll give it a 5 because there's not a whole lot to rank on it. And that's Cataclysm, pretty much. Not a whole lot to really say. It's a pretty iconic level. Most of you guys have probably played this yourself, or at least heard of it a little bit. Overall, according to my rankings here and averaging them together, it comes back to a 4.63, which I honestly thought was going to be a little bit higher than that. I'm not going to rank it based off difficulty because it's an entry extreme demon. I already explained that, and I'm pretty sure that's already well known anyway. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you want me to do this for the rest of the Apocalypse Trilogy videos, I kind of already made one similar to Bloodbath. I didn't give it official ratings. And I could still do Aftermath, although I would have to replay Aftermath as well. If you want me to do that, or just with some other set of levels, I'll be okay to do that as well. So, like always, let me know. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.